we're here to talk about a very, very near and dear subject to my heart. Y'all know I'm raising sons. It's very important for me for them to have, um, one, the understanding that emotional intelligence is very, very big. For them to understand it verbally, how to communicate it, as well as for them to have a community. So, because I am not and never will be a man, I brought you guys here to answer some questions for the community, just to kind of help talk about the issue. So let's get into it. Can either of you share your personal experiences or observations regarding the barriers that prevent Black men from seeking help for mental issues?
You want to go first, brother minister?
Yeah, let me do that. Barriers that prevent African men from seeking help. Um, let's deal with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is racism, white imperialism, and how that manifests itself in various agencies, various mindsets, particularly the mindset of you don't need to talk things through. Okay. You just need to be on your hustle and grind. We don't have time for what I call Oprah moments. Okay. And I think, I guess you could say that there's external and internal barriers. The internal barriers basically of not wanting to admit that you may be insufficient through no fault of your own, that you may be inadequate through no fault of your own, and always being measured by a standard from which you have been denied to achieve. So if nature built you to be this thing we call a man, but yet there are external forces that have prevented you, what I would call arrested development. Okay. But yet it demonizes you, vilifies you, and criminalizes you for not reaching it. Okay. That's where a lot of your quote unquote mental illness begins. And I always like to put things within context and not look at situations in a vacuum. Okay. So if we want to talk about mental health, mental illness for African men, what does that look like for African men having to navigate in an anti-African society, which is designed to prevent them from reaching their full potential as men?
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad that you brought up the external factors that put us in that situation. It is a catch-22, right? And yes, there are, no access to medical, to mental health, no access to, insurance, all that stuff that we don't have to, because it's expensive to go see a therapist. Let me say this right now. Whether you're doing single, couples therapy, family therapy, it's expensive. I've seen the bills, and this is like, woo. And not all insurance covers it. So that's number one. Number one, that getting access to that. But number two, you're right. We have a situation where, you're right, white supremacy says that we are these machines, we are these robots, and we are just bodies that are supposed to, whether we was on the plantation or in the factory, or on the streets, we're just these machines, and our bodies are disposable. And that includes our mental and emotional health. They are disposable. So yes, I agree 100%. There's that external factors that's preventing us from doing that. That being said, our people have always been resilient. African people have always been resilient, whether we're talking about our history, our science, martial arts, whatever. We've always had to learn how to preserve all that information, all that knowledge, all that wisdom, pass it down to one another, right? Because I learned African history from our elders. They passed it on to me. I didn't learn it in the schools. I'm degreed, but I didn't learn it in the schools. I learned it on the street corners from the brothers and the sisters. They passed it down to me. So just like that, when it comes to mental health, we have to figure out ways where we can begin healing ourselves through community, because that's the only way we're going to make it out of here is through community. So that's, we have the external, then we have the internal, where we have this idea of masculinity being that we have to be these emotionless robots, because that's what we were told to do.
Right.
We were told that we had to be emotionless robots. So we perpetuate that every day in our community, in our schools, in our churches, on the street corners. We perpetuate this idea of, to be a man, you have to be this emotionless robot, right, that's headed towards self-destruction. Pretty much just like the Terminator, right? When you look at about Arnold Schwarzenegger, the movie Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminators, they were these robots that were mass-produced to kill one another, right? And that's pretty much the cycle that we continue to perpetuate, and the cycle that we have to figure out how to stop. Does that answer your question?
It's time to figure out how to stop it. And I heard, yeah, very much so. I heard both of you gentlemen talk about societal expectations, and a lot of those expectations start first at home. Not only those, but stereotypes. Can you tell us how those expectations, stereotypes of Black masculinity has impacted your own mental health and potentially the mental health of other Black men that you know?
I know, like, and the minister could probably speak to this, because when we were younger, pimps were like a big deal. Like, it was in our music. We talked about it. Men bragged about it. As men, we bragged about how many women we got. I remember being a young man. I remember being in the military, and at breakfast, we would get together and we would all talk about our sexual exploits from the night before. So our masculinity, we believed, because we were taught that, right? Because remember, on the plantation, you were valued as to how many children you could make, right? That's what the value of a man or African was to the slave master. How many children you can make, right? With as many women as you can. And that's something that we kind of like continued on after slavery. So a lot of us, our masculinity is tied to our sexual prowess, right? How good we were in bed. I wouldn't even say how good we were in bed, because it wasn't seeking pleasure for the woman. It was just how many women we can bed. And that was something, when I was young, I was really caught up in that idea of my masculinity is tied on my sexual prowess, how many women I could bed. And also I know a lot of my peers at my age, we have this discussion about vasectomies, because I'm like, we got to stop having all these kids at this age. But a lot of them feel like their masculinity is also tied into having children as well. So that was something that affected a lot of us, and how we treated our women. Because we thought that that's what a man is supposed to do, right? And also the idea, the capitalist idea, which is a Eurocentric idea, the capitalist idea which was fed into us, that we're also masculine by how much material wealth we accumulate, right? So what kind of car I drive, right? What kind of clothes I wear, what kind of sneakers that I have on, what kind of jewelry I have, trunk jewelry, right? We call it trunk jewelry. Those are all things that we were told we had to be men. And that's what we projected, that outside shell of what masculine is. So that was, for me growing up, that was my experience.
And for me, well, here's what I found, is that a lot of our quote unquote rites of passage into manhood came through one of four vehicles. It came through Greek lettered organizations, gangs, military, sports. In my case, it was sports. Okay. The stereotype, particularly when you have African males who have earned scholarships, athletic scholarships to universities, particularly predominantly white universities. The minute you step on campus, you have already been branded as a jock, to the point where people will ask you not what is your major, but what sport do you play? And a lot of times, many of us who played football, the brothers will say, well, I'm here on a golf scholarship, or I'm on a swimming scholarship. Okay. And only when we may be in a classroom or some other academic setting where you get to see another side of us besides being gladiators on game day. Okay. So we had to overcome that stigma and that stereotype of just being jocks that were given, quote unquote, a free ride.
Wow. I didn't know you played ball, Minister.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. We're just bodies. We're disposable bodies, right?
Right.
That's powerful, brother. And the academics, it's crazy that across the board, often as a woman, I feel like that aspect of me is very undervalued. It's interesting to hear you say the same for our brothers, especially in collegiate arenas, like where the focus should be academia versus the sports. That's man. So, in your opinion, gentlemen, what are some outdated roles and expectations that Black men are still expected to adhere to, and how do these roles contribute to the mental health challenges?
I would say this, and I think Dan, being a contemporary, will concur with this. I think we have to get off, or we have to shed the John Henry role. Okay, because traditionally, particularly if you go back into, say, the late 19th century on down to the present, many of us have taken on that John Henry role where physically we can outdo anything and everything. And for those who may be unfamiliar with the story of John Henry, his physical prowess of being able to use his hammer to, lay down railroad spikes. And so he was challenged to work against this train. Okay. But it was like a drill. Yeah. All right. Long story short, he barely won, but he killed himself in the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Going back to that whole disposable body thing, where we feel part of our manhood is in our physical prowess, tied into sports.
I'm glad you brought that up, because Disney just got in trouble for redoing that story in a cartoon on Disney Plus, and they caught a lot of flack for that. Wow. So a lot of people will be familiar with that story.
Okay. So I think for African men, if we can shed that John Henry mentality of thinking that our physical prowess, we can overcome anything and everything, including technology. Okay. Which now is beginning to render our physical labor obsolete. In many ways, there's an economic term we use, creative destruction. Because now technology, which renders our physical bodies obsolete, because if a machine can give us the same productivity as a human at a fraction of the cost and a lot less headaches that humans bring with them to the table. Okay. Now what do we do? All right. So I say get rid of that John Henry role, that John Henry mentality.
And I agree. And there's this and I talk to a lot of brothers about this all the time. I mentor men that are, maybe 10 years younger than me. And we have this discussion about how there's this pressure for the accumulation of that material wealth, right? There's this, I have to get more debt. I have to do more of this. I have to make more money. I have to do more of this. And that's a big pressure that we also need to get rid of. This idea that we have to accumulate all this wealth and have all these things to make our families happy or make them comfortable, right? Food, clothing, and shelter, everybody needs that, right? So, and I'm not saying that a man shouldn't provide. We should. If we're going to raise a family, we should provide. But there's this pressure to be, bigger house, bigger cars, all of that. And that all ties into the John Henry idea, because I just work another job. And I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of, well, you know what? I want my family to be super comfortable, so I'll work another job, because that doesn't, again, we don't get enough rest, right? Because we're human beings. We don't get enough rest. We spend less time with our families, right? That affects our mental and emotional health. And we don't do much self-care because of that, right? because we work ourselves to death. And John Henry worked himself to death, like literally worked himself to death in that story. And that is a metaphor for us as well, perfect metaphor, right? So I think that all ties into the physical part as well.
Right. Oh, and one other thing that came up while you were talking, I think religion as well, and I'll explain. In the Old Testament, where it says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Okay. So that accumulation of material wealth now is that man thinking not just of the here and now, but now being pressured to think 2 to 3, maybe 5 generations beyond him, which puts even more pressure on him to saying, okay, if I can't feed my immediate family now, I was listening to Dr. Miles Monroe, and he was saying how a good man should be able to the inheritance for his children's children, he should be able to leave that for 2 to 3 generations down the road right now, not when he makes his transition. So that's even more pressure to not only think about the here and now, but 2 to 5 generations down the road.
In the presence of superinflation and stagnating wages, job discrimination, high incarceration rates for African males, like we can go on and on. All of the external stuff on top of that,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now, y'all said some amazing references. John Henry is one of the ones that I've often referenced for my sons, to show them the power and the strength and the imagination and creativity. And plus, he's got a cute little girl that he likes in the little cartoon, so it's phenomenal. You get to show them. Like I said, I can't represent the thing that I'm not, so I always have to create this kind of community. And you're right. I do see a lot of Black men that struggle with finances, not acquiring them or maintaining them, just that pressure, that anxiety. I actually know a gentleman that ended up getting hypertension because he was so stressed mentally, just piling this on himself, the bills, taking care of the wife, taking care of the family, not being emotional, not feeling pain, to where that when he went into the doctor's office, they immediately put him on blood medication drugs because they thought he was going to stroke out looking at his heart rate, but he had just been living like this for months and would have never known. So my question is, what steps can be taken to challenge and break down some of these outdated roles and expectations in order to promote healthier expressions of Black masculinity?
I think Brother Minister said it first. I think we have to let go of some of these, the John Henry. We gotta let go of wanting to accumulate all this wealth, all these material things. Excuse me, not wealth, because you should accumulate wealth, but not material. The thing is that we think wealth is material things. So we got to get out of this idea of accumulating all these material things. And the pressure to what we used to say back in the day, to keep up with the Joneses, right? You gotta let go of those things. But I think the one thing I learned at a very young age was I used to get these really bad migraines, and the doctors couldn't understand why I was getting these migraines. And I remember one year, for a New Year's resolution, I decided to get more sleep, and literally overnight, I stopped getting those migraines. So I learned very early that the first thing I need to do is make sure I get enough rest. Like not on Sundays when I'm not working, when we sleep in. I mean, every day I'm getting enough rest. I think that's the first thing we need to do is getting enough rest. And I think the example you gave for Goddess with the brother, he just wasn't getting enough rest. Like that's probably the number one thing we should start doing, focusing on rest. There's a sister that does the NAT ministry. She talks about how, it goes back to slavery, how we weren't allowed. We was working from sun up to sundown. Then we had to worry about our families, got very little sleep. So that's something that comes from that enslavement, right? Not getting enough rest. Matter of fact, Nas said, sleep is the cousin of death. Like, what are you talking about? You need to get rest. So I think the first thing I'm going to say is get rest, however that looks like to you.
And to add on to that, it's interesting because Dick Gregory always said that the number one cause of death in America is sleep deprivation.
Yes.
Okay. And to add on to that, not only getting proper rest, but also what are we ingesting?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have, I remember the founder of Move, John Africa, he said, if you want to find the best food, go shop where the white people shop. Now, I thought that was funny when I first heard it, but what he was saying is that do we have access to quality food and water? Okay. How much water, pure water, are we ingesting on a daily basis that, flushes out our system? All right. How much exercise? And when I mean exercise, not just walking. As we get older, one of the things I'm learning is that we need to be engaged more in strength training for a number of reasons. One reason in particular, when you talk about your testosterone level, okay, testosterone affects three main things. It affects your lean muscle mass, it affects your libido, and it affects your mood. Okay. So they always talk about as you get older, it gradually declines. So what are we doing to make sure that we keep our testosterone levels at a high rate? Okay. And strength training is one of those ways that we can do that. So proper rest, what we ingest in terms of food and water, and rigorous strength training. So I think, we start there. And when we also talk about health, do we take the time to just unplug and just be? I think a lot of times we're addicted to noise. We're addicted to being on the go, but we never take the time to just stop and be, just to recharge. Because a lot of time, how many times are we running on E, but we're still trying to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then all of a sudden, somewhere we crash because we never took the time to recharge our batteries.
I'm glad you brought that up because, like, there's a mental fatigue, there's a physical fatigue, and there's a mental fatigue. And I think from experience, mental fatigue to me is much tougher than physical fatigue, right? Because the thing is, you're right, we don't unplug. We don't. Even if we're sitting, we might be watching TV, right?
Right.
Before they go to bed, they're on their phones. We don't really unplug, right? Until we close our eyes. And I think we do need to take time out of each day to unplug and just be centered on ourselves. Whether you meditate, whether you sit in nature, whether you do yoga, you definitely have to find a time to unplug, because all that's something. And you know what? You said it earlier. We ingest when you watch something, when you read something, when you talk to certain people, you're ingesting. You're ingesting information. It works just like a physical when you eat food. It's the same way. And you could be ingesting negativity, bad stuff. Last year I did a negative fast where I couldn't watch or read anything negative. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't speak negative. I couldn't, cuss. That was probably the toughest 30 days of my life right there.
Wow.
Where I couldn't read. I love reading comic books. I couldn't read comic books. So but I realized that those 30 days, I ingest a lot of negative information. I really do. It came as a shock to me because I thought I was somebody who didn't do that. But I really ingest a lot of negative stuff, and it taught me a valuable lesson that, yes, I need to unplug and watch what I ingest, mentally.
Yeah. In fact, I actually did a 30-day speaking fast at a Shawala retreat.
Oh, wow.
In I want to say I was in Massachusetts. So basically we were all at this retreat and nobody could speak. We had to find nonverbal ways of communication.
Wow.
And so we engaged in that. We engaged in a walking meditation, stationary meditation, but no speaking.
Wow.
And that was a very powerful thing for me because I think it also allowed people to heal by not speaking, because there was nothing you could hear except the bell when it was time for meditation.
Wow. That'd have been tough for me. you paid for that?
No.
That'd have been tough. Like, yeah. Another thing that I recommend that brothers do is find community. Because I think a lot of times we feel like we're alone.
Right.
And for me, from my experience, finding community, that's how I met Sekou, brother Sekou. That's how I met a lot of brothers that are on this show through just community. Like, I can't put into words how brothers have really been in my corner. As when I started my family, my brothers have been instrumental in me being a better partner, a better father, a better mentor, a better educator. Just to this day, completely instrumental. Like, I couldn't have done it without them. I would have to write a book to thank everybody that's been in my life, that's been in my corner. Shout out to the Varners, first of all. And the late great brother George. Like, they were in my corner, they supported me, they lifted me. When I needed to talk to someone, they were there for me at a moment's notice. And I think that was crucial in my growth and development, and really in my mental health. It was really crucial, because the moments when I felt like I was going to break, they were there for me to uplift me. So finding community is crucial. And we have to learn how to get out of just talking about sports and women. It has to be about other deeper issues. We have to really talk about that. So finding community is, and you have to find it. You really do. But they're out there. They really are out there. So that's probably the biggest. If I walk away with anything today, is that, to find community.
And you may find different quote unquote tribes and clans for different aspects of your life. So like where I'm at here, there's a group called Community Fathers. Cool. And it was created by an elder, Walter Simpkins, who is now an emeritus. But he created because he saw the need to help fathers who were wrestling with reentry after incarceration, navigating the child support system, finding work, all of these things, and really just creating a place where men can feel emotionally safe, and knowing that they have a sounding board to say, here's what I'm faced with. What can I do about this particular situation? And so it's not just, just having one group, there's multiple things that you can tap into. And especially for the younger men, I think this is the thing that I think is really missing. I always feel that every man should have an elder or an OG that's 2 generations older than him. Okay.
I agree.
Because I think what's happened is that somewhere along the way, we've been disconnected from elders. Okay. And it's to the point where, and I think I said this in another show, where now you've eliminated the OGs and replaced them with IG. Okay. So now you've got a generation who thinks that artificial intelligence is the new OG, but Google, Instagram, etc. can't give you the wisdom that an OG can give you, because there's certain things that an OG has lived through that artificial intelligence will never experience.
I agree. And I want to go back, because we talked about this in the previous podcast episode. We talked about the effects of crack cocaine on our community and how it disintegrated our community, right? Where I remember a time when, the elders would be like, hey, what you doing over here? I'm gonna tell your mom, right? I'm gonna call your mom, or I'll discipline you, or your mother heard about what you did. And then when crack cocaine came through, it really destroyed that, where a lot of our elders became afraid of the young people. And then the young people saw the elders as outdated. So we have to it's a two-way street. Elders have to be present, and then the young people have to seek us out. Well, I'm not an elder yet, but we have to seek the elders out. So that's what needs to work. And I really, again, if you seek, you'll find them. And like they say, the student will show up, right? So I think because of that disintegration, a lot of us still have that fear of walking up to one another and talking to one another, just having a conversation.
Right. And as far as the elders go, one of the things that I heard Dr. Miles Monroe say is, don't be a generational thief. And what I mean by that is, whatever knowledge, wisdom, and understanding you possess, don't just keep it to yourself. That is to be bequeathed to those future generations, so that way you can shorten their learning curve, and so they can avoid the pitfalls that we experience.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, that's our job. We got to share that information. We have to pass. We definitely got to pass it on, because there's a lot of stuff that we lost. Especially during COVID, we lost a lot of elders during COVID. So I agree 100%. We got to definitely pass that on.
And like I said, whether it's oral or whether we, write books, I've always talked about immortality being putting your experience in a book, so someone, 75 to 100 years from now can benefit from the wisdom that you passed on. I used to tell my nephew this. I said, look, I can teach you about the past, but you have to teach me about the future.
Indeed.
Okay. So I can advise you and give you information that is relevant to you. I think sometimes we make the mistake of passing information on that may have worked for us, but is obsolete and irrelevant to what their situation is. So we always have to be mindful that what we give the youth is relevant to their situation today.
No, I agree, because I know a lot of people come to me for dating advice, and I'm like, dude, I was dating in the 90s. Like I don't think I could give you any information. I was dating I would love to help you out, but I was dating in the 90s. It was a totally different time, But I do want to say, you said something about writing. I'm mad that I learned this late, but journaling has helped me out tremendously. And I think the best part of journaling is that I can go back a couple years and I can read what I was talking about that particular day. And I'm like, oh, wow, I was really tripping, or, oh, I didn't see it this way. And, hindsight is 2020. So but it really helped me with my growth and development. It really helped me formulate my thoughts, really helped me push through the emotional spectrum. I was able to really, I'm upset today, but then later on, I might just be disappointed in myself. And later on, I might be embarrassed, but I'm able to walk through those emotions and how I feel about certain things. So journaling has been tremendous in my healing journey. I have several journals now, and I recommend to all the dads out there, all you young dads and young uncles too, right? You should write a journal to your child or niece and nephew, because what's going to happen is 20 years, 25 years from now, they're going to have questions, and you're just going to not know. You're just going to forget these things, but you have it written down, and they'll be able to access that information. My youngest is doing an autobiography, and I was like, I'll just pull out the journal I wrote for you when you was a baby. Right. And I gave it to him, and it's been tremendous help for him. So writing, doing a journal on yourself. I have a writing journal. I have a professional journal where I talk about what I do at work. Right. And then I have one. I'm doing another one for my youngest son now. He's about to graduate, so I'm doing one for him to give to him when he graduates. So, that's just journaling has just been tremendous help. It's helped me really with my mental health and all of that stuff. So,
yeah, cause it reminds me of what Chuck D said in Welcome to the Terror Dome. When he says, when I get mad, I put it down on a pad, give you something that you never had.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So, so journaling is really a constructive outlet for whatever rage or whatever emotion you have, now that you articulate it through writing or even through sketching.
Yes.
Okay. Which has become another form. I think it's still called art therapy. Okay. Where now you can express yourselves, whether it's through the written word or whether it's through some art medium. Okay. So I think it helps us and behooves us to find constructive outlets to express whatever it is that we're feeling or whatever it is inside us that we feel the need to get out.
And then that ties into what we talked about before in another podcast, avoiding self-medication, because journaling has helped me avoid self-medication, because a lot of us self-medicate. A lot of us ingest drugs and alcohol, to forget the things that we're going through. And I think journaling kind of like circumvents that. So, but we have to avoid self-medication as well, like, because that's for men our age especially, it's been a big problem.
Yeah, it's like that old Mobb Deep song, "Drink Away the Pain." So it's like, okay, do we want you to write about drinking away the pain, or do we want to see you with some Hennessy really trying to drink it away? Okay, so that's why I said, finding things that are constructive and productive to get whatever whatever that rage or whatever that intense emotion is out of you, because it could lead you into discovering another aspect of who you are as a man.
Facts. Or rediscovering something you did when you were young that you stopped.
Ooh, right. That's so dope, gentlemen. I love what y'all said, because as a grown woman, that's where I'm at now. As my children are spending more time with their father and learning more about that side of their family, that is one thing that I look to my children, right? Because they give me back pieces of myself. So I look at my sons and see how they're phenomenal little artists. And sure, they get some of that from their dad, but that means they also get some of that from me. So that means I have to tap into that to continue to express myself and grow deeper into who I really and truly am. So again, I always love making the contingencies between how men and women are so similar, even though the output is different. You as a man may take journaling and learn something totally different. I've done the same thing that you're talking about with my sons. When they were in utero, I created email addresses for the two of them. Now they're both talking to me from those email accounts. It's kind of trippy. But have either of you encountered like some specific stigmas or prejudices within the healthcare system when seeking mental health support, or just in general healthcare support? And then what can be done to address and overcome these barriers?
I will say that in looking for, if you have the money to get a therapist, you have to shop around. And I think what happens oftentimes is that even though it's all documented and there's studies that prove it, and everybody from politicians to lay leaders to mental health therapists have talked about it, you have the therapist has taken into account that you are Black and that there is an oppressive system that is on your neck. And if they don't take that into account, I believe they're doing you a disservice. So I think that when you shop around, you should ask them that, what do you think about white supremacy? Do you think it exists? Do you think it affects me and my community? And if they say no, then you might want to go to someone else, because the wild thing is that it's documented. There's studies that that say that yes, white supremacy, slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, all these things have affected us, not just physically but mentally and emotionally as well. Right. And if that therapist doesn't take that into consideration, you need to take your business elsewhere. So,
yeah, and I guess I would put it this way: it's like you can choose a Dr. Alvin Passant, or you can choose a Dr. Bobby Wright, or a Dr. Naeem Akbar, or Dr. Patricia Newton. Okay, because these are all Black psychologists, but one is considered mainstream while the others are considered quote unquote radical. Okay. The ones who are considered radical take into consideration what you're dealing with, understand that you are trying to navigate through a racist society. I think it was Dr. Bobby Wright who basically said that psychology, as we know it, its primary objective is to get you adaptive to an insane society.
It was Bobby White, yeah. Psychopathic,
Okay.
I guess, yeah, he did that, yeah.
Okay. So it's like, in essence, there's really nothing wrong with us, but something has happened to us. And all we're trying to do is, how do we make sure that we can maintain our sanity, maintain not only our mental and emotional integrity, but our spiritual and our cultural integrity inside a toxic incubator that we call racism, white imperialism. So it's kind of like this external force versus this internal power that we're trying to exude. If that makes sense.
It does. No, it does. It does,
Okay.
because, and it goes back to what I was saying. If your therapist is not adding the white supremacist component to it, then that outside, you might as well not go to the therapist, right?
Yeah.
Because
I think
the outside component and that internal, right? So yeah,
right.
Our response is internal.
Because I think the most ideal is to find an African-centered therapist. That's the ideal. I had one for 7 years. He was originally from South Africa, went to New Zealand, and then finally made it here to the States. And that experience really, it was mutually beneficial, because coming from different parts of the African world community, it was like we were able to exchange notes about our experiences as African men in different parts of the world. And it was kind of like he would ask my insight about things going on in America. I would ask him about, what was South Africa before apartheid, post-apartheid. And some things that you find are very, very similar. Once you remove all the propaganda and once you really sit down with one another. Okay. So finding one ideally who's African-centered would be mutually beneficial.
And I think the way you can do that is word of mouth. So like, the wild part is I have a colleague who's an African-centered psychologist, very good friend of mine. We met through dancing.
Okay.
But he's my friend, so I can't go to him. But I recommend him to people that I know, to brothers that I know. I'm like, hey, you need to go to this brother right here.
Right.
Shout out to Dr. JD. But yeah, he's someone that he recognizes that, and he's just like, yeah, let's deal. But yeah, they're out there. So use word of mouth to find them, because you're not going to see it if you have access to the insurance. Insurance, the way it's set up, is not going to tell you. But you should shop around, definitely shop around. But word of mouth is going to save us. Just, again, I'm going to go right back to community. We not only should we be seeing a therapist, we should be having circles with brothers. If anybody needs, I do have an outline for a 6-week circle for men. I call it Fresh to Death, DEPTH. And it's an outline of what you can discuss and how you do it. And I can send that to anybody who wants that. Because my goal is to set up as many of these circles around the country as possible. So if I run into somebody in New York and they ask me, so my brother over here does it in New York, my brother does it in Florida. So I'm trying to make it as many as I can. So
right.
Ooh, I shaded that. Gentlemen, we got a really, really dope question in the comments. This brother said, y'all be knowing stuff. What books y'all be reading to learn this? And as you can see, Brother Dan got a whole library behind him. So share with them some knowledge, gentlemen.
You did say the book that I can never remember the name, Bobby White's book, The Psychopathic
Racial Personality.
That's the one that was a game changer for me.
Okay.
And it's a short book, couple of essays. And Bobby White, I think he's the late great Bobby White is the premier scholar when it comes to Black psychology. And then the late great Amos Wilson wrote. I know everybody references his Black Power book, but the one that when I became a young parent, his book on child psychology was very crucial in me as a young parent.
Right.
But yeah, Amos Wilson is another one.
Okay. Since you brought up Amos Wilson, there's two that I just pulled up here. Make sure I get them in front of the camera. If you can see this, the falsification, the African consciousness, that's one. Okay. And then the other one, I just got this last week. I haven't tapped into it yet. Issues of Manhood in Black and White.
I got to get that one. Yeah, I don't have that one. Yeah.
Okay. And not only
he has one called The Psychology of the Black Child. Every Black parent should get that one, The Psychology of the Black Child. That's the one.
Right. And the other one I think he wrote is Awakening the Genius.
Oh, yes.
The Black Child. Okay.
Someone stole that from me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my favorite book, Naturally Awakening the Genius in Black Children.
Right. And then for those who may be familiar with Dr. Naeem Akbar, Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery.
Yep.
And then Breaking the Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery.
And Visions for Black Men and Community of Self. Those four. And
okay.
Yeah, and Dr. Naeem Akbar travels the country. He still lectures. So if he shows up in your town, highly recommend that you go. He's very personable. He'll eat dinner with you. Really great brother who put in a lot of work and amazing. Just But Dr. Naeem Akbar.
Okay. And then for those who are familiar with two ancestors, one, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing.
Yes.
And her work, the ISIS Papers. And then her protege, Dr. Patricia Newton, who became an ancestor a couple of years ago. I think she was working on a book. She was based out of, I want to say, Baltimore. If you were to study those two women and dealing with, now they dealt in psychiatry, which meant that they also had they were also licensed to offer medication if necessary. Okay, so they dealt with psychology and psychiatry from an African-centered perspective. So I would definitely recommend those two ancestors.
Super dope. You know, I'm always about giving the gift of knowledge, and I love that you gentlemen are so well read. How can we engage the older generations? Dan, you say you're not an elder, but you're on your way, and that's not a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? You closer to being an elder than you think. You an uncle. I guess that's the how the lineage goes, right? You go mom, dad, auntie, uncle, elder. So as an uncle, how can we scaffold? I feel like this is a very important time for our age group to reach kind of between both worlds, right? There's A, B, C, we're at B, right? We can reach back to the youth, those that are younger than us, but still kind of connect with the older generation because they understand us a little bit better. So how can we begin to engage those older generations in conversations about mental health to bridge those gaps between that mentality and the new school perspective to create a more inclusive, understanding environment?
I'm gonna just say that, and I just moved it. We just bought a new house. I moved into a new community, and in this community, a lot of my neighbors are older, and you know, my mother taught me, because my mother's 72. She's gonna be 72 this year, and she goes for these long 5 to 7 mile walks. She's been doing it all her life. So, and she taught me that you walk in your community and you get to know people. Just get to know people. And it's funny because I missed that last podcast. I was on the phone with my mom. She was going on her walk because it was too warm. She went later, and all the dogs in the neighborhood were like following. They were like walking with her because they know her, right? So she taught me very young that you should talk to your elders. So like so as soon as I pulled up here, I'm working. You know, I'm all dirty. I saw my neighbors. Hey, how y'all doing? Introduce myself. Found out they were older, and just consistently go check on them. I go check on, I have elders that I've known, and I just go check on them. I just go visit them. I bring my young people with me, whether they're my capoeira students or my mentees. I bring them with me so they can meet them and they can talk. And it's funny because they end up becoming better friends than I do. They be I went to visit them the other day. So I think it's very simple. Just go where they at. And if you're an elder or OG, you make sure that you're present. So I know as an OG, I'm known, when I was in Virginia here, I was known for always showing up. I'm always showing up. I always want to share. And because I want to lead by example. So if you always show up and you're present, you can make those connections. So go visit your elders, go check on them, go see how they're doing. And it's I love it because they drop nuggets of wisdom, just little nuggets here and there, just like they do in the movies. You know, in the movies, you go to movies and the old kung fu martial artists are dropping nuggets. It's the same way. They do the same thing. They drop nuggets, and you have to digest them, and it'll come to you later on. So that simple thing of just meeting up with them, talking to them, asking questions, helping them out, helping them with their groceries goes a long way.
And I think a lot of times how you conduct yourself, you can attract elders to you. Okay. I've known that that's been the case with me, where an elder will just show up out of nowhere, where I'm just going about, doing my thing, and whatever it is that I'm doing, it sparks something in that elder to want to come talk to me. Okay. So sometimes how you carry yourself, you don't even have to go looking for elders. They'll come to you because there's something that you're doing that they're impressed with, and they want to share something with you.
And I just want to say that shout out to Sekou, because I remember when I was in God, I can't believe I forgot. When I was in the Imani Foundation, they taught me that I have to bow to my elders. So that's a habit that I always have. I always tap my hand and I bow to my elders, no matter where they are. And they always point out, they'd be like, "You're always bowing. You're always bowing." And I'm like, "You always bow before you hug me." I was like, "Yeah, that's an African tradition. I'm supposed to bow to you because you guys have been through a lot, and I have to honor you for that. Especially, if you lived in the United States, you've been through way more than we had. So I have to honor and respect you. So I bow to you." And you're right. They noticed that, how I carry myself. You're right.
And that is true indeed across the board. As somebody said it earlier, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So if you are acting as if you are ready to be taught by an elder, you're right. It's very, they'll just show up. It'll be a happenstance, but nothing happens by chance. Are there any specific cultural or spiritual practices within the Black community that can be utilized to promote mental well-being and resilience among Black men?
One thing I do with my students, unfortunately, a lot of my students experience gun violence. They lose a lot of family members and close comrades to gun violence. So I teach a lot of them how to pour libations. And a lot of times, like, I'll have them come to me and they'll say, "Hey, Mr. Ardy's gonna talk to you for that." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up? So-and-so passed, can we go pour libations?" And I'm like, "Oh, wow." And we'll go outside and get to this tree and we'll pour libations. And sometimes they'll just see me doing it. When I remember somebody, an ancestor that I just forgot, and I remember them, and I'll go pour libations. So that's a practice that I want to teach them, those traditions, right? To commemorate those that have been here before. And then I also get on them about, especially the knuckleheads, I get on them about, well, my cousin got murdered and and I want to do this. And I'm like, well, I think you would honor his transition if you stay here, put in work, and uplift your community. Like that's how you honor their memory. So that ritual is the first step in honoring their memory. And then we can figure out what we need to do to make sure that we continue to honor their memory in a positive fashion that positively impacts our community. So that's one ritual that I do all the time.
And I think another that comes from the various orishas is building an altar. Having an altar and having your own council of ancestors. So I give you an example. So for myself, I may have a council of ancestors, whether it's Maggie L. Walker, Madam C.J. Walker, O.W. Gurley, the founder of Black Wall Street, the Honorable Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Herman J. Russell, who is a prominent entrepreneur in the Atlanta area, Reginald F. Lewis. So if there are issues that I'm addressing in terms of Black economic empowerment, Black entrepreneurship, I would say, what can I do? And call on that ancestral entrepreneurial spirit. And also S.B. Fuller, who I consider the godfather. In fact, he basically was the godfather, sales-wise, to Mary Kay Ash. In fact, she would drive hundreds of miles just to listen to Fuller and gain his sales training. Okay, so we can set up that altar and pull on those ancestral spirits and pull on their legacies to say, how can this legacy help me in today's world?
Jeez, that's tough. I told y'all I went to DC recently to check out that African American History Museum again because they have the Afrofuturism installment. And what the brother Zumbi is talking about, I did just that. I went to call on my ancestors to be like, hey, this health and wellness thing, it really sits deep on my heart. Show me the way. And in that museum, I saw healthy body, healthy mind. We're a legacy of leadership, a legacy of entrepreneurship. So everything that I'm doing, even no matter how trepidatious it feels, is along the right path for those that have come before me. What advice would you gentlemen give to other Black men or even young men who may be hesitant or reluctant to seek help for their mental health? And how can we encourage them to take their first steps?
I think, again, I said it earlier, finding that community. Because in your city, there's a community that does this. There's a community of men, of Black men that are seeking to heal themselves in their community. And like Minister Zumbi talked about earlier, they're different tribes. There's different tribes. It may not be over here. I mean, this tribe may not be for you, but this tribe might be for you. And you really have to look. But they're out there. I'm telling you. And a lot of times, they're like right around the corner. Like, it's not even a matter of you got to really look far out. It's right around the corner. It might be in your local church. It might be in school. But they're out there. There's mentorship programs. There's programs that'll actually pair you up with a mentor. And I'm talking about Black men, right? I see it all the time. So but one thing I've learned is that I've had young men come to me and ask me to be their mentor, and you just have to ask, and you'd be surprised who would be honored to be your mentor, who would be honored, who would love to mentor you, who would love to help you. So you just have to ask, and you'd be surprised who will be there for you.
Yeah, and really, when you're trying to find a community where you feel emotionally safe.
Yes.
Okay, and I had to explain to women, I was on a panel discussion, and she was complaining about her husband won't open up, won't talk and everything. I said, does he feel emotionally safe around you? Okay, because for a lot of brothers, they feel that there's nowhere on this planet where they feel emotionally safe. Yep. So they have to play everything close to the vest. Okay, so finding a place where you feel emotionally safe to, as they say in church, lay your burden down. Okay,
I agree. That's a very good question. Very, very good question.
So real quick, brothers, just for the ladies out there listening, how does a woman create that space? Because a lot of women are not taught, right? We've been too conditioned to treat you as if you don't have emotions and thoughts and feelings. How can a woman create space for that man to feel emotionally safe?
I don't know, and that's because I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't know. So I'm sorry. I mean, I don't mean to be that. I don't.
No, that's a fair answer. That's a fair answer. Let me rephrase the question then. What is something that your counterpart or someone you've been with has done for you that made you feel emotionally safe?
I think I'll approach it this way. Okay. If you look at previous generations of African women, they had an understanding that their men on some level was engaged in some form of combat. Okay, whether in the workplace or wherever. And somewhere she was taught, either intuitively or through a socialization process, to make the home a sanctuary. And once that man walked into that house, whatever was going on outside stays outside, because he knows now he's in a safe place. Okay, He's in an emotionally safe place. He's in a familiar, safe place. He can lay his burden down and he can just be. Okay. And I think that's what you were talking about, that science that has been lost because we've taken on alien cultural value systems that do not serve us holistically.
I want to second that. My partner, we've been together over 23 years now. And that's one thing I will say. She's let me be what I wanted to be, you know. And I'm saying that it's humanly possible. I'm not saying I'm not jumping out of airplanes or anything like that. But I'm a capoeirista. She lets me be a capoeirista. I'm a beat. So there have been times when we have played capoeira in my house at 1, 2 in the morning. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm a b-boy. She lets me b-boy. You know what I mean? Like, she allowed me to go to the murder capital of the world to teach b-boying for the State Department, right? But she lets me be who I am 100%. Like, she lets me be one. She's been very supportive. She's been and then, you know, like when it comes to the community, she's been a upstanding member of the community. She has been everything you know, what I look for in a partner. That's what I wanted, and that's what she is, right? So she's someone that's been and she's been a partner. That's one thing. That's why I always call her my partner. She has been a partner to me all this time, and I think when you have that understanding that it's a partnership, it'll work. It'll work. But and then reciprocity, right? She loves me and how she knows how to love me. I love her and how I know how to love her. But I've never felt, even though and a lot of it is internal. A lot of it really isn't our partners. A lot of it is internal. There was times when I felt inadequate. She never told me I was inadequate. She never told me that I was slipping. You know what I mean? It was something in the back of my mind that said, well, my family doesn't have this, so I have to get another job, you know? And she's like, she never told me I had to do that. She never threw it in my face. So that she's always made me feel I feel like a man around her. And I'm not saying, and I want to be careful when I say that, because I feel like you should always feel that way in any room you step in, or try to. And I don't think, and I know that we shouldn't consistently depend on outside validation, but outside validation is important. But she's never made me feel inadequate, even when I was wrong, right? And she's never made me feel less than. So that, you know, just a second off of what you said, Brother Minister. But that's what I can say. I can say to that. I can speak to that. She's never made me feel some type of way, right? Okay. She lets me know, yo, you're a great dad. You're a great human being. You're a great person. You're an asset to this community. And she supports that in me, and vice versa. I'll do the same to her. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Fit Goddess, like, I can speak to that.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think the term is, and to sum it up, what Dan was saying, do we speak life into our men? Okay. Instead of speaking death, because death is always around the corner whenever we leave our homes. Okay. But when we come home, is our partner speaking life into us to recharge us, to encourage us, to empower us? Okay. So I think that's always been the woman's role, is speaking life into her man, because she understands as she speaks life into him, reciprocity, he will bring life to her and the children.
Brother, you said a mouthful right there. So this has been a phenomenal show. We gotta wrap it up, because, you know, it's getting late. But before we go, both of y'all are phenomenal gentlemen. Tell us where we can find you. Danny, I'm gonna need that circle thing. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to create a mentorship program, you know, the gods. And I just need to be able to train or assist in training a man to do the thing, and then help him do more of this, because this is very important for me. One, because I'm a mother of sons, and I need to know that this thing is happening in the world, so that they have a safe place to go to and continue to grow into their manhood. But whoever would like to start, tell us where we can find you, what you do, and then we'll close it out.
My podcast, where my killer tape at. I'm gonna be posting a new episode next week. I have a guest on the show, so it's on all platforms. And you just look up DanTresOmi, just Google that, and you can find me. You hit me up. I'm accessible. You can email me. Definitely accessible. You could always ask questions. If you need help with something, let me know, and I can definitely find you a resource.
Okay. You can actually find my book, Gospel of Afro-Nomics Theology, on Amazon. You can also find my Facebook group, Gospel of Afro-Nomics Theology, where I'm constantly putting content on that speaks to the economic challenges of the African world community and solutions that can help the African world community become more financially free and economically independent.
Absolutely wonderful. I didn't want to show my face because, again, this was about the gods. This was about you guys and how we can be of more help and service to the gentlemen that are, you know what I'm saying, taking care of a lot of things. So to all those out there on YouTube, thank you for joining us on this insightful exploration of Black masculinity and mental health. We hope that this episode has sparked important conversations and raised awareness. Remember, it's essential to challenge the stigma and outdated roles to support mental well-being of Black men. Remember, please like, comment, and share this video to spread awareness and encourage an open dialogue. Thank you to the two of you for being a part of the Fit to Heal community. Remember, everybody stay strong, stay healthy, and together let's create positive change. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more empowering content. Until next time, take care and keep the conversation going.
Peace.
Peace. And